Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Getting in a College Coach Conversation. My name is Ian Fisher. I'm going to be the host for today's episode. We've got a really great episode lined up for you. A lot of awesome listener questions have come in over the last couple of weeks. And so we're going to spend the latter 2/3 of the episode diving into some of those listener questions and talking about college admission and finance and those particular issues that are especially interesting to you at this point in time. But before we do that, we're really excited to introduce our first guest on the show today. We've got Andrew Cohen here. Hey, Andrew, how's it going?
Hey, Ian, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Really happy to have you. Now, you are a senior enterprise account executive at LinkedIn in the education vertical. And I think a lot of people might think, well, wait, what's the relationship between LinkedIn and a college admission and finance podcast? And Andrew, actually, I've been using LinkedIn a lot of late with my students. And I think this might come as a little bit of a surprise to our listeners, but we want to unpack a little bit about how high school and college students can make use of LinkedIn, both in terms of helping to establish some of the connections with people along their career paths, and also in terms of actually using it for college research. LinkedIn, I must confess, is the only social media platform that I use. So that's the only place you can find me if you're looking. I would love to just dive in a little bit and hear what your recommendations are, especially for high school students, right? They may not have work experience. They might get in there and start setting up their LinkedIn page and wonder, where do I even begin? What do I do here? What do I put on this page? So what's your advice for students when to start and how to start setting up a LinkedIn page?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just jumping in, I think it sounds like there's some fear that's built into this a little bit. And that's a difficult thing when you're, 16, 17, 18 years old starting out. But the sooner you build your presence and what we like to call your personal brand on the platform, the better the payoffs are going to be down the road. And listen, this is the Gen Z generation. LinkedIn just came out with this amazing research on Gen Z. This generation is the workforce going forward. Within the next 3 years, you're going to be 27% of the workforce, believe it or not. Baby boomers are retiring. Millennials like myself are, moving into leadership roles, but Gen Z is coming up. And this generation, you're leading the great reshuffle. You are the fastest growing generation. You're the most mobile generation. You're also the most educated. Our research says that 86% are engaged in some form of online learning. You are just changing the education landscape before your eyes. And that's the perfect reason to be on LinkedIn and start thinking about how to use your education for the careers and inhibiting that entrepreneurial spirit that is really built into the generation as well. You're the most entrepreneurial generation we've ever seen. Getting started, create your profile. But the first thing too is ask for help. You're going to know somebody who has a profile and who has an amazing profile. Get over that hump and ask for help. There are 810 million members around the world on this platform. I guarantee someone with an amazing profile. So to start, ask for some help in creation. And the first thing you have to do is put on an amazing professional photo. It still boggles my mind how many people don't have a photo and don't have a professional looking photo.
Yeah.
Please don't put up a prom photo. You can do better than that. Go in front of a solid white wall, have someone take a really nice photo. What we see, these stats are crazy. We see 21 times more views on your profile if you have a photo, 9 times more connections, 36 times more messages just because you have a profile picture. And then on top of that, you mentioned a lot of people don't even have experience. I bet they do. And it's okay if you were an intern or a lifeguard or worked at an ice cream parlor. You want to put that on your profile. You want to demonstrate those skills that you're part of the workforce in some capacity. Those jobs can lead to amazing opportunities. Let me give you a quick example here.
Sure.
If you worked at Target, for example, over the summer, or at a big ice cream shop, and you indicate you worked at those big corporations, when that logo is on your profile, they have hundreds of thousands of employees there that you're now invariably connected to. And it gives you, and it really starts to fill in your feed and give you that opportunity to reach, new connections with someone that you have in common.
I was having a conversation with a student the other day about getting started on their activities list, right? So the college application has this activity space, and there certainly is a Venn diagram of stuff that you would put on LinkedIn and stuff that lands on your activities list. But I think there's also kind of a third circle of things that students don't necessarily think matters, but probably does, even for both of those contexts. I'm thinking about things like babysitting or pet sitting, or just certain kinds of activity that you do within your community. There's a lot of space for community service and volunteer work on a LinkedIn page. And so what I'm hearing from you is this can be, in some ways, for a student, great initial practice for something that they might do later for their college application. And their college application, in turn, is practice for thinking about things that matter for then managing their LinkedIn profile, their professional resumes, et cetera, kind of going forward. You said something about reaching out and connecting with people who have a profile, who've got good ones. I think it's kind of easy to see which ones are good ones and which ones aren't, but maybe there's some rules of thumb there. I'm curious about, I've always wondered about this personally, and I think it might be a good question also for these teenagers who are a little bit nervous and are getting on this platform the first time. What's the etiquette around connecting with people on LinkedIn? It's not quite like a friend request on Facebook. It's not quite a follow on Instagram. It's a little bit of a different kind of thing. How should students think about making those connection requests with people on LinkedIn?
Yeah, great question, Ian. The three things when you're doing connections is, the first, you want to tie it back to you personally. So what I mean by that, when you make a connection, you have two options. You can connect with someone and just send the connection request, kind of like a friend request on other platforms, and leave it at that. Mm-hmm. But to really get the benefit out of the platform, we give you the ability to write a quick, like 250 character personal message along with any connection requests. Yeah. So what we recommend are these three things. Who are you, right? How did you find their profile, right? Did you go to the same high school? Because we have the high schools mapped on our thing. Did this individual go to the university that you just applied to? Mm-hmm. Are they a cousin? Did they work with one of your parents? How did you find them? And then the third most important and most difficult part as well is value, right? What value can this connection bring to you, and what value can you bring to this connection? Yep. This is where you want to do a little bit of research, right? Did you read something interesting about the industry they work on, or did their company just come out with a new product that really excites you? At the end of the day, people love to talk about themselves. And so if you, in your connection request, right? In your connection request, yeah, if you're able to just show a little bit of curiosity, I'm really interested in what your business is expanding in China right now. I'd love to talk about it. Are you able to, set up time with me? Believe it or not, people are very open these days to those conversations.
I think that's right. And I love underscoring that idea, especially to high school students. I think they've got a lot going for them in that, first of all, they're young, they're still students. I think that people are always responsive to a sense of earnest curiosity, right? So the value, especially that you can bring in that connection as a student, and the interest that you have, I think is huge for an adult. Like if I had somebody that reached out to me who says, I'm really interested in what you do for a living, I'd love to spend 30 minutes just asking some questions. Absolutely, let's do it. I would love to reward that kind of initiative with a conversation. And I also tell students, like, this is a good way you can impress somebody with the questions that you ask, with how that 30-minute session goes, such that at the end, you haven't necessarily asked for an internship, but they might be thinking, you know what, I want to offer this kid one because of the way that they're connecting with me. And I think LinkedIn is an interesting way to open up that door, because there are people that you wouldn't necessarily have a chance to connect with. And there's this platform that's already baked in to allow you to do that. How much should students be hesitant or concerned about what's appropriate in terms of reaching out? I think I can imagine a student saying, I don't actually know this person. It would be weird. They're a third level connection, so they're not even connected to a connection. how should they feel about that barrier?
Right. I'm so glad you mentioned third degree. So the way we think about connections is really these circles, right? So your first degree connections are those you're actually connected to, right?
Right.
Ian, you and me, we connected earlier this week.
Yes.
From there's second degree. So for you, for example, you now have access to my almost 3,000 connections on the platform because through me, I can introduce you to all these people. That's a second degree. Third degree goes a little bit beyond there. Starting out, I think the first goal is try to get to 50. Try to get to 50 connections, right? 50 connections starts to make your feed work for you. You're going to get enough content flowing through your feed that you're going to start to see a lot of value. And then from there, focus on the next circle, which is second degree. And that's where you reach out to your connections, right? Who you have relationships with, and ask for introductions. Say, Ian, I see you're connected to Molly. She attended University of Texas. I'm really interested in this school. Would you be able to introduce me? I'd love to get her perspective.
Yeah.
Right there, you can do that. And all of a sudden you're now, bridging a connection. Molly's going to want to most likely talk to you as well. That sort of mindset. Once you get over that, a little bit of fear, you start to see a ton of value coming to the platform.
Now, I have a student that we had a conversation about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and she's interested in a particular field in her city, and she's curious about opportunities this summer. And what we did was we went onto LinkedIn and we searched for people who worked for prominent organizations within that field, and just clicked on a few of those profiles and said, all right, who actually works here? And I encourage her, why don't you look for women in this field, because it was a field where there aren't a lot of women that are involved, and talk about your interest in being a woman in this professional space and making those connections and reaching out in that regard. And it's a little different, right? Because there's not necessarily that introduction that's happening, but this is also a very niche kind of thing that she's looking into. How receptive do we think people are? I mean, is LinkedIn a space where there's a little bit less friction to that kind of conversation than finding someone's email on a directory and sending them a note, or walking up to the building, which you probably don't have enough time to do, and knocking on a door and saying, hey, I'd love to talk to you about this thing? That would be a little bit probably over the line. I don't know. Is that something that LinkedIn has any information about or data on that we can encourage?
Yeah, first, I love the way you went about that. You were looking at these people in these certain roles. You can do the same thing with job searches, and then filtering down to try to find people who you aspire to. First, when you find that profile, take a look at that profile, because that is probably a great way to try to mimic, like, what roles are they in? How did they get there? Where did they go to school? What's
that path? Yeah, right. Exactly.
What skills are on their profile? What volunteer things have they done? What certifications do they have? I mean, what an amazing launch pad to first go that direction. And in terms of like that cold reach out, one of the really, really interesting things we see in the data here is that people want to mentor others. They just don't know how to do that. So the same way that people want to be a mentee, people also want to be a mentor. And it's a hard place to look, especially outside of where you currently work. So people are very open to it. So, take a shot, work on your quick elevator pitch about who you are and why you're interested in this, and what potential value you can bring to the relationship. You might not hear back, or you might be told not the best time, and that's okay. You're going to get told no. It's okay. Yeah. What's the worst that could happen, right? But you don't. Yeah. It's a saying I've been taught here is, you don't get what you don't ask for.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Reach out. If you happen to have anything in common, maybe you both volunteered for Boys and Girls of America. Maybe there's an organization that you both worked at prior, or you're from the same county. Any personal thing that you can relate back increases the likelihood of that person getting back to you. Same reason it increases the likelihood of you, landing a job. What we see is that, you have 4 times more likely to get hired when you're referred by somebody. So you got to start building those connections.
Yeah. I mean, that happened at College Coach. I was referred by somebody who worked here already. So I can definitely corroborate that in my personal experience. The other thing that I think I'm hearing from you, and I don't know if you're saying this explicitly, but you can tell me if I'm wrong, is that especially these initial connections, you keep them short and sweet. Like you're going to make a pitch. You're going to essentially say something about your connection with that person, your interest, why you're reaching out, but you're not, let me send you my entire resume and tell you the backstory of my interest in this space. Maybe that comes out in further conversations, but the initial conversation is pretty short, pretty targeted, right?
Right. Focus on the relationship first, build a connection, drive a little bit of value, then you can start kind of making those requests. But yeah, short and sweet. And then once they're connected, then you can start to see those second degrees. Don't go in asking for everything.
No. Yeah.
You'll scare people away.
And yeah, and they're just like, I don't know if I can do this, and I haven't met this kid yet, and I don't know if I can really commit this time. You got to let it be a little bit more organic. And one of the things you said about mentors is I think it's a lot easier to find a mentor than a mentee. Like if you think about, I want to have a mentee, what do? It's like, I'm not going to go to the local high school and say, hey, does anybody want to come and be mentored by me? That is not going to work, right? So the mentors typically have to wait and get asked by the mentees. And so there's a big open space for students to step into here. We are short on time, but I want to really cover this other space, this entire other space. And we might have to have you back, Andrew, to talk a little bit more about this. But LinkedIn is actually a pretty robust tool for researching. You alluded to this, some of the pathways that people can take in order to get to certain professional outcomes. And there's this really awesome opportunity to look at different kinds of universities and where people who graduate from these universities end up in terms of industry distribution and also the locations they tend to live in. And so I wonder if you could just give an introduction, a high-level introduction to that tool on LinkedIn so that people can start researching it. And then maybe we can have you back to dive in greater detail.
Yeah, Ian, that would be great. It's a great question too. So I alluded earlier, we have over 120,000 schools on the platform, including high schools. But when you get to the college and university level, and you access and you click on those pages, you search for them on LinkedIn, and you get to their page, there's a tab called the Alumni Tab, which what it does is it pulls in all the members who attend or attended that university indicated by their profile. And so what you're able to do is look, it's the largest longitudinal study of career outcomes in the world. And what you can do is filter by geography, industries, job titles, companies they work at, and it'll show you all the people who attended, University of Texas, Rutgers, you name it, to see, oh my God, this person is, the VP of engineering at Netflix, and they went to this school. You can look in their profile. How did they get there? What steps did they take? When did they graduate? Do we have any connections in common that someone, because that'll also show, right? Do they happen to know Ian, right? To work yourself backwards. And then, go a little bit further. What did this person study, right? What was their field of study? What skills do they have? And then work yourself backwards. If you think, wow, I want to be like that person, right? I want that job. I want to live in Los Angeles and work for Disney, for example, right? You can go to the university, filter by Disney, filter by Los Angeles, see the 300 alumni who work there, and then see, okay, 20% of them studied business there, 20% studied marketing, group studied psychology, political science, and you get a sense of the pathway that they went there, and you can start envisioning yourself. And it gives you a really amazing perspective if that's the direction you want to go, to start to visualize yourself there, but also realize that this school, this degree can provide you with the right pathway, and you can start to compare it to others as well, that you're trying to develop that short list that you maybe want to attend for university.
So I think that's a great homework assignment. And even if you're a kid that's out there that doesn't yet have a LinkedIn, it's great to get started. You could also use your parents' LinkedIn profile to go and do some of this research along these different schools. But go in there and take a look at an industry that you're interested in or a school that you want to learn more about. You'll find that the tools there are really robust. It's something that we use at College Coach quite often to look at different institutions and help guide our students. So, Andrew, thanks a lot for coming today. There was way more to talk about than I thought. I don't know why I'm surprised about that, but I really appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Of course. All right, folks, when we come back, we're answering your questions, so don't go away.